History of Aviation podcast with Derrick Beeler, David Rowe, and David Gorman.
Hello, friends. What you have here is another episode of the History of Aviation podcast, and it's number 46. I'm Derrick Beeler, and as always, I'm joined by Mr. David Rowe and Dave Gorman, and this one's called the Grumman Albatross. Now, guys, when we decided to do this aircraft, one thing came to mind immediately, being a parrot head. Are you fellas familiar with the case of mistaken identity between the Jamaican authorities, two music legends, and an albatross named the Hemisphere Dancer?
I'm gonna guess it might have something to do with a local green product, perhaps.
A lot of local green product is what they thought.
That was the initial thought. In January 16th of 1996, Jimmy Buffett and U2's Bono and his family got shot at while taxiing an albatross named the Hemisphere Dancer over to Jamaica to get some chicken, right, David Rowe?
Correct. They were on a pleasure trip, and the Jamaican authorities saw this big old plane taxiing out, and they thought otherwise because, you know, there's a wild trade of illicit drugs, I think. Mm-hmm. And so the Jamaican authorities took it upon themselves to stop the aircraft and put a few holes in his poor albatross.
Goodness gracious. You know, you could put about 5,000 pounds, almost anything in there. So I can imagine they were probably upset, you know, that they missed out on their cut of the action.
Maybe so.
Could have been.
But luckily, nobody was injured. They got everything worked out. And I think he even made a song out of the whole incident, didn't he?
The Jamaica Mistake.
Well, now who made the mistake?
That would be the Jamaican authorities.
I'd say so, because he laughed all the way to the bank, right?
The Jamaican authorities actually acknowledged the mistakes and apologized to Jimmy Buffett. So that's a great. We just lost him recently, so that's a great homage to Jimmy Buffett.
Absolutely, and I hope our friend Rob Huffaker might be listening. He's a big aviation enthusiast and a music teacher, buddy of mine, and he's gone to air shows and things with us before, and a major parrot head. And I know he and his son, who love Jimmy Buffett, they sure hated to lose him, like people across the world.
Absolutely. I am a born and raised parrot head myself. So yeah, great story there.
Well, and if you want to see that aircraft, you can still go see it. It is in 2003, Buffett retired it from flying, and it's now at Buffett's Margaritaville at the Universal Orlando Resort in Orlando.
It's right behind me.
Yeah. So if you want to go see it, and I assume there's some patches somewhere on that aircraft, you can go check it out.
That's awesome. But hey, wait, there's more.
Oh, yes, there's much more. It's a big old airplane. If you've never seen one up close, they are extremely large. It was a twin engine designed by the Grumman Ironworks, and they created several flying boats, and this was the ultimate version that they created. Twin engine, high wing, primarily a search and rescue aircraft, and it was built to land and take off in the ocean. So it's a big, strong bird.
It absolutely is. And this one for me is a childhood memory, early kind of imprinted into my brain. This was maybe the second or possibly the third model airplane kit I ever had. And I don't remember who bought it for me. My father had been in the Marines, but the Albatross never served with the Marine Corps. I don't know how I got it, but I had a 1/48 scale, probably a monogram Albatross, and my older brother helped me build it, and it was painted silver and had yellow bands and everything, and it was just an awesome looking aircraft. I just thought it was so cool. So much so that anytime I saw a plane that looked like it, I thought that's an Albatross, and then found out it was, a
Right. Yeah.
23 or maybe an 826 or something. I was a little bit confused, but twin engines, I thought they all were seaplanes. I had a lot to learn, but I love going to air shows and seeing these guys and a bunch of them, three or four or five or six, come up to Oshkosh every year, and I always walk among them because I've always liked the look of them. They really are big aircraft, and I didn't know until I saw one in person about the wing tips and how they could rotate up to the tips of the wings. They got the tank. I'm sorry, the flotation devices there that can rotate up and everything. It's just it's a cool aircraft. It's got plenty of room and just awesome. Now, Derrick, you were telling us before the show. Somebody asked Jimmy Buffett what it was like in the back of the airplane. What did he say?
He didn't know. He was too busy flying it.
That must be nice. But it looks like plenty of room back there and would be an awful lot of fun to anywhere inside that plane would be a great place to ride, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
There's some videos out there of walkarounds where they go inside, and the insides of these are immaculate. Some people have restored them with luxury seating. I saw one with a couch, a flat screen TV, DVD players, plug-ins in the wall for your iPhone. I mean, they have really brought these aircraft because they were originally built in the 40s. 47 is when the first flight, and they have really upgraded them and made them really nice machines today that you can still fly around. Really, if you want to travel, this is a giant flying house. It's really cool inside.
Well, I was going to say it's almost like a flying yacht. I mean, the idea of landing on the water and being able to get out, and I've seen pictures of spreads of magazines where people land and they're getting out, they're swimming, they're diving off the top wing, they're just having a big time. It's like a big recreational vehicle. It's an expensive one.
No doubt.
$9 million worth.
Wow, it's got a lot of flexibility, and I've not yet had a ride on one. I'm hoping to make that happen one day.
That would be very nice.
David, who built? Oh, go ahead, Derrick.
Don't go to Jamaica is what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's been done. That's been done. David, who built this plane?
The Grumman Ironworks. Grumman is a company that's been around since the 30s. They are probably the gold standard when it comes to naval aviation in the United States. They had a long history of building aircraft for the Navy. And in particular, they started out by building amphibious aircraft. I was going through the list, and they built the JF Duck, which is a single engine biplane amphibious aircraft in 1933. So that was their first amphibian. In 37, they built the Goose. In 1940, they built the Widgeon. 44, the Tadpole. 46, the Mallard. And in 1947, they came out with the HU-16 Albatross. So this company has had a long history of building amphibious aircraft, along with all the cats that they built for the Navy, the Wildcat, Hellcat, Tiger Cat, Bearcat, and probably their most famous aircraft was the F-14 Tomcat. So they have a really great history of building strong, really reliable aircraft for the Navy.
Now, that seaplane version of the Tomcat, don't know much about that. How'd that work out for him?
I think that was a one-off. I don't think it made it to production.
But they certainly knew a thing or two about flying boats, and demonstrated that with the history that you just ran down, some of those earliest flying boats, and we still see the Mallard and the occasional Goose, and not an occasional Goose, actually, they're turbo Gooses that are out there, and Mallards.
Exactly.
They spend a lot of time out there, and they're very popular, very loyal owners, and a lot of support that's offered to those owners, add-ons, and upgrades and all kinds of things. And you mentioned about the luxury accommodations that could be put into an Albatross. I mean, that's a cottage industry in itself. They built a lot of these planes, didn't they, for such a big plane?
466. So not a lot, but yes, quite a few, enough that there's plenty still around.
Yeah, they really are. Good looking plane. There's one not too far from where I'm sitting right now over in Sevierville.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I don't know when the last time, and it's the Red Bull Albatross. I'm not sure when the last time it flew was. It's been many years, but I did get a chance to see it fly over Sevierville several times. And I know it's made water landings up at Douglas Lake, which I've yet to see that. I understand we might be heading up to Douglas Lake for their fly-in here in a few months, but that'd be great to see an Albatross come in.
Yeah, I think that one probably will have to have an annual or two done to it before it's ready to fly, because it's been sitting in that museum for a good bit. It takes up a good bit of space right in the center too. So when you open the doors and walk in, you cannot miss it. It's right there for you.
Oh
to
yeah,
see.
absolutely.
Yep. And it looks great. I mean, it doesn't have any military look to it at all. It's highly polished, and the Red Bull coloring and everything like that. That's why I guess I was so struck by seeing this plane in a military paint job, that first model of the Albatross that I had. It did serve. It was originally designed for military, though, right? Long before these civilian uses, as they came out of the military use. What was it used for primarily in the military?
Basically, it was a search and rescue aircraft. So what had happened was we had the PBY Catalina through World War II, and it was getting old, and they needed a replacement for it. So the Albatross was the next in line. That's what this was actually built for the Air Force originally, and it was totally for search and rescue, combat search and rescue. It was used extensively in Korea and Vietnam. And one of the differences between the Catalina and this aircraft is the Catalina was armed. You could carry bombs. It had machine guns, whereas the Albatross is strictly a rescue aircraft. It doesn't carry any weapons. It's just there to go out and, rescue down pilots at sea or, on land or wherever it's necessary, because it's obviously got wheels to land on land, or it can land in the ocean.
Sure can. And it was not horribly fast. I mean, a plane that size, twin engines, radial engines and everything, but a good loiter time, and certainly a good platform if you're trying to locate down flyers, down aircraft, down, survivors. This plane gave you a lot of options for that, didn't it?
Absolutely. It could carry 675 gallons of fuel internally, 400 gallons in its wingtip floats, and two 300-gallon drop tanks. That gave it a range of about 2,500 nautical miles, and it could stay in the air for 10 plus hours. So if you needed to go and search for a long period trying to find somebody, this aircraft had the legs to do it.
Well, I was looking, I was unable to find a number of how many airmen or crew members or personnel that the Coast Guard or the Navy or the Air Force might have rescued with the Albatross. But, if you're bobbing in a life raft after 2 days, and you see one of these things come over and signal and come in and land to get you, what a thrill that would have to be.
Yeah.
I did actually find a number for the Korean War. I don't have a number for overall. During the Korean War, the Albatross rescued around 1,000 United Nations personnel from coastal waters, rivers, and behind enemy lines. So right there in just the Korean War, you've got at least 1,000 people saved.
That is amazingly high number. I might have thought 200, 250. Wow.
Well, that was what I found. It was over 1,000 for the Korean War. And interestingly, the very first rescue it did was on the 5th of August, 1950. there was a strike by some Corsairs, and apparently two of the Corsairs collided in air, and one Corsair unfortunately crashed and the pilot died, but the second one was able to parachute out. Or no, I'm sorry, he ditched. He couldn't parachute out, so he had to ditch at sea, climbed out of his aircraft, and they dispatched an Albatross and 3 F-51s, which are P-51s renamed, to go rescue him. So his name was Ensign Glenn Farnsworth, pilot of VF-113, the Stingers from the USS Philippine Sea. He was the first rescue in the Korean War.
Wow.
And the Albatross was under the call sign Dumbo.
Well, that's a call sign for air and sea rescue that I've heard before.
Correct. So I wonder if that's where it started.
Yeah, maybe Catalina's, I think, have flown under that as well. But interesting. So you mentioned the first flight, I believe, was 47.
Yeah, first flight was in, what was the date? October the 24th of 1947, and it went into military use in 1949.
Well, it obviously, post-war, there were a lot of developments with jet engines and a lot of technology upgrades and things like that. But this plane looks like a throwback. I mean, it's not going to be mistaken for some big, sleek type of late 50s type of design. It definitely reeks of the 40s, but also the early 40s. But, putting a boat that you can take off in, because I look at this more like it is a flying boat than a airplane that can land on the water. This is it often is called an amphibian, as a descriptor, as an adjective, more than most similar planes. I always hear this called the HU-16 Albatross amphibian or things. I've read that before. It was equally at home in the water and in the on land. A lot of these were land-based, Coast Guard, Navy stations, and things like that around the world. But I know it also saw service in other nations, right?
Yes, quite a few other nations, as a matter of fact. Where's my list here? Oh, here we go. Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Chile, China, Germany, Greece, Iceland, Indonesia, Italy, Malaysia, Japan, Mexico, Norway, Pakistan, Peru, Philippines, Portugal, Spain, Thailand, and of course the United States.
Like a pro.
Well, that really is a wide reach of nations and countries with different needs, and clearly this was a successful plane and flown by pilots around the world. Just hats off, tribute to the engineers at Grumman for finding that and filling that niche so well.
Yeah, absolutely. The Grumman folks, just proved that they knew how to build aircraft for naval use. They had the right formula and they applied it in this case. So yeah, it does look like a 1940s plane. You could certainly see it in World War II and it would fit right in. But it's sort of a bridge aircraft. It was built or designed then, and then lasted up through the Vietnam War. So it had a pretty long life.
And the good thing is it wasn't like hundreds of them were gathered up and sent to the boneyard to be scrapped. I know some were, but there's still, as we said, a bunch of these that made it onto the civilian market. Some of them became airliners and actually served airlines in some countries, didn't they?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did not know this, but Micronesia had an airline. Apparently, these albatrosses were flying around all those Micronesian islands. So you had Pan American World Airways, Continental Airlines. They flew albatrosses from Yap, Palu, Truk, and Ponape in Guam until 1970. When they finally started building runways on the islands. So the Albatross was the only way to get around up until that point.
Wow. So it's quite possible that there are more people alive today who know this as a civil transport or as a civilian-owned aircraft than as would necessarily know its military history.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly right. That they were spread out around the world and they were used in civilian use probably as much, if not more so now than the
Yeah.
military.
And then when I think about that, I mean, it's and nothing wrong with that, by the way, but the ones that you normally see, like I said, up at Oshkosh, they're civilian. I think there's been one or two military, if I think back. But Dave, you have a picture behind you that, knowing you, this is one you took.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
I see
Yes,
the logo.
That is the International Test Pilot School. They flew into Tri-Cities Airport about 2 years ago, saw them coming, got to the airport, and I've got a video on my YouTube channel on Aerophile that you can watch. The aircraft is there, starts up. I got a great video of it taking off down the runway. But yeah, just it was passing through. And as you can see on the picture, for those not listening, it's red, white, and blue. It's extremely colorful. You can see the people walking out to the aircraft. So it gives you a good idea of just how large the aircraft is. As a matter of fact, we haven't talked about it, but it seats up to 10 people inside the fuselage, along with a crew of up to 6 people. So it can carry upwards of 16 people inside the aircraft.
Wow.
So, it's got quite a bit of space in there.
Now,
so yeah.
You said who operated this?
The International Test Pilot School. If you look at the nose, it's written on the nose, International
ITPS.
TSP. Yeah, Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
So, but some of those guys, they're coming out of some pretty hot aircraft and feeling pretty good, but there's some guys who are probably putting this thing through its paces as much as you can at 200 miles an hour. And
yeah, exactly.
what's the ceiling on this? Like 18,000, I think, maybe.
I think it was 21,500.
Okay, you're not going to get there in a hurry.
No,
but it will be a stable flying platform as long as you stay out of the Caribbean Sea, apparently.
Yes. It flies at about 236 miles an hour and it cruises at about 124 miles an hour. So it's not super fast, but it can stay up for a long time.
What's the horsepower on those engines? 1,425? Is that correct?
That's what I've got. Wright Cyclone R1820s with
there.
Yeah. And here was something interesting I didn't know. So they've got the 3-blade Hamilton Standard propellers on it, but they are fully feathering and reversible pitch. So I was listening to somebody talk about on these, new ones that you can, fly around. Jimmy Buffett going to the island for a barbecue on the beach. Well, you can just fly up, slide up onto the sand, get out, have your beach party, hop back in, start it up, and reverse the props and back out.
Very nice.
It can, you can fly this aircraft backwards on the water.
Don't try that in the air, though. There's a lot of things I don't know about flying, but that is one thing I do.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has tried that successfully.
He sure wouldn't want to. Well,
no.
So what are some other uses that this plane has seen in the military? I think I read somewhere that it had some special forces history.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I read where the Air National Guard Air Commando groups used them for covert infiltration and extraction of their special forces from 1956 to 1971. So, that's Vietnam. So they were inserting people in and out.
Part of me, I get the extraction part, landing on the water and going and getting them, but it's the insertion. I would think that would be, flying pretty high and hopefully pretty quietly and not making a lot of noise as you come in and guys jumping out of the back of the airplane or whatever. But you wouldn't necessarily mark this one for that type of covert use.
Well, to my thought, I would assume they would just fly in and land on a beach or a river and just slide up to the bank and the guys get out and it turns around and gets out of there. So maybe it's, I
I like my story better, but I bet you're much closer to the truth on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how easy it is to parachute out of one of these things.
Oh.
Not sure I want to try it.
No, you're probably right on that. So, well, it's, made by Grumman, so the capabilities, I'm sure, were discussed early on, and part of the sales pitch was all the things that you can do. But
Yeah.
I'm just struck by the durability, the ruggedness, and the fact that this plane is, what did you say, first flight in 47?
Yeah, first flight was in 1947. Let me speak to the ruggedness of it. So the Albatross was designed for when it lands in the ocean for optimal 4-foot seas. So, you think a 4-foot wave, that's, reasonably big. It could also take off in upwards of 8 to 10-foot seas with the assist of jet takeoff rockets, JATO rockets. So it was quite capable of taking a beating. I mean, 10-foot waves, that's pretty large.
Well, if you look, with the floaters that are on the wings are a pretty good ways up from the body of the aircraft itself.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got plenty of room there.
I did read that a lot of times, in one instance in particular, the B-52s were doing the arc light raids, and on the very first one, a couple of them collided and crashed, and several of the crew got out and landed in the water, and an Albatross was sent out to rescue them. And unfortunately, the seas were so heavy that all it could do was taxi, and it taxied back to a Norwegian ship that picked all the people up. And the Albatross, unfortunately, was unflyable, and it ultimately sank. Mm-hmm. But, even they just treated it like a yacht. They just, got it going and, got to another ship that could save them. So, even in times like that, it's highly capable.
Well, that's some creative thinking for the crew to be able to, keep their heads about them and point it in the right direction and get the heck out of there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
The Albatross has a couple of world records, if you didn't know that.
And
I did not know.
Okay. Well, on the 4th of July in 1973, one of the last Grumman Albatrosses in service with the United States Air Force set an FAI altitude record for amphibians, Class C3. It took off at 12:30 in the afternoon and reached 32,881 feet.
Wow.
Exactly. It exceeded the previous record set 37 years earlier by 7,900 feet. And I listened to the pilot video of the pilot. They took off. The plane was supposed to have been retired from service the 1st of July. So this happened on July the 4th. So it was after it was supposed to have been retired. He got everything approved. They took off, and apparently there was a thunderstorm, and the engines are overheating. So they jumped into the thunderstorm to get cooled off, and it actually lifted them up even higher than they expected. Wow. And they got this altitude record of 32.8, which to my knowledge still stands today.
Good Lord.
Impressive.
Well, they pretty much obliterated that previous record.
Oh yeah, almost 8,000 feet difference. And there was one other one in 1997, a Albatross piloted by Reed Dennis and Andy McAfee became the first Albatross to circumnavigate the globe. 26,347 nautical miles around the world, lasted 73 days. 38 stops in 21 countries, and they flew for 190 hours. And that aircraft was donated to the Hillard Aviation Museum. You can see it there. And that's going back,
that's very similar to the Cessna world record. Very similar.
Probably is,
Yeah.
Typical, but going back to the altitude record, that aircraft was actually flown to the National Museum of the Air Force at Wright-Patterson in Ohio, and you can see that aircraft in the museum today. So it's out there. It was one of that's actually the last flight of an Air Force Albatross. Was when they donated it.
Well, I guess, some of this is just kind of surprising to me to realize it's been retired that long.
Right.
It really just had a short window of service. 25 years maybe?
Yeah, like 49 to 60, what did I say, 73? Yeah. Well, actually, let me go on a little further here. The Navy's Albatross was retired August the 13th of 1976, and it went to the Naval Air Museum at Pensacola. And the final Coast Guard flight of an Albatross was in March of 1983 when they retired their aircraft. And the last military use of the Albatross was by the Hellenic Navy in Greece in 1995. So it had a bit longer than you think, but not in the U.S.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I ever saw any of the active duty ones. I mean, I did get to Patuxent Naval Air Station for an air show in 1970 or so, but I sure don't remember seeing one there. That would have been a good place for one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But now, since then, we've had, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I haven't seen a personally owned one, privately owned one, other than the Red Bull one that's in Sevierville. Haven't seen any other ones flying into Tennessee in a long time, if at all.
Well, other than that one that I caught at test pilot school, that's the only one that I've actually seen flying. So that's my one catch.
Yeah. We heard you.
that was a fly through. He was just stopping for fuel and for everybody to get out and take a break. So
he's like a magnet for unique aircraft.
This long enough to get your video and
He lives in a geographical oddity.
Well, let me tell you about the unmarked L-110 Hercules I saw today, but we'll save that for later.
And you can see all that over on Aerophile, correct?
Yes, you sure can. As a matter of fact, I just posted pictures of that L-110 Hercules on Aerophile's Facebook page. So, it's there's a lot out there to see on Aerophile.
That's aerophile.com, and you can catch on all social media under Aerophile, correct?
Yes, you sure can.
And Dave Gorman, where can folks find you on social media?
Well, usually crying when I think about the unmarked C-130 that David saw and test pilot albatrosses or albatri. Just jealousy is an ugly emotion. What can I say? But if I get past, recommend you come check me out at Gormania on YouTube. I do have a Instagram at It's Dave Gorman. That's there. I'm on Facebook, things like that, all kinds of stuff.
Well, and if you want to check out, go ahead.
I was going to say, I actually got in a little airport time this week. Went out to E. Tyson 2 nights ago and was there. I had seen that there was a 135 or so in the pattern, maybe 2 of them in the pattern. By the time I got there, there was one that was still doing some touch and goes. So I parked right at the entrance, right at the end of the runway when he was coming in over me, and was able to film him coming over the motor mile. That was a lot of fun. Watched him do a couple of those passes. And then last night I saw the same thing, but I didn't go to the airport. And by the time I got home, I realized it was an E6 Mercury that I could have been watching, and not a one. Yeah, I could have stood right in the same place 24 hours later. That guy good touch it goes. Oh, well, if I want to see it, I can look at Aerophile on here. So maybe I'll do that.
Well, I don't cover Tyson quite as well, but, whenever I'm down there, I try my best.
Indeed.
We'll be down in, Knoxville in a couple of weeks. So hopefully I'll get a few more shots while I'm there.
Well, definitely give us a holler while you're here, and you can always find everything History of Aviation Podcast. All the links are listed below. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. We got the Facebook group that Dave Gorman runs. You can join there and find out every little thing that's happening, find out what's coming up. And if you want to hear the song Jamaica Mistake that we talked about, you can look that up on YouTube because I cannot play that due to copyright.
That's how it is.
They will strike you hard.
Exactly. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it, guys.
Absolutely. Great plane.
Excellent plane.
It takes me back, and one of these days I hope that I can wave at David as he videotapes me while I'm sitting in the co-pilot seat of an Albatross.
There you go.
Oh, now we can talk about jealousy.
There it is. That's all it would take, right?
That's his future goal. He's going to get it done. I'm telling you.
Oh my God.
I hope so. I hope so.
Well, awesome plane. And any of those folks who've been fortunate to see one that served in the military, if you saw it live, we'd love to hear about it. Give us a shout out in a message board or Facebook page or comments. We'd love to hear more about your experience with this awesome plane.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. We will see you out on the next one.
Definitely.
Can't wait. What'd you say? 46? We're coming up on 47?
Yeah, this is episode 46. 46.
We need to do something special for number 50. That's almost, I mean, they're all special, of course, and we got a couple more to do before then, but we need to be thinking about what number 50 is going to be.
Yes. Big number, big plane.
Can't
Big
wait.
number, big plane. Yeah, I mean, what are you guys thinking? Let's just put this on the table right here on the podcast. What are you guys thinking for episode 50?
I think it's got to be something unusual, something different, something far thinking, something that was just maybe ahead of its time and sometimes a little behind its time at the same time.
Space shuttle.
Oh, I like
Ooh.
those late 50s designs that were like, what in the world? How could you even draw that up? Sometimes they came up with some wild things.
Yeah. Okay. You've got something in mind.
Oh, the Sea Dart's pretty wild.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was a
Very unusual.
Jet powered, pretty
Yes.
wild. Have we done the B-58 Hustler?
We have not.
No.
Another Convair product. That was pretty wild. The B-36.
Well,
Now we're talking big, really
Okay.
big.
let's take a vote. Folks, I'm going to make a short video of this part of the podcast. Put in the comment section below which one you want, and that's what we'll do for episode 50.
Can't wait.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
I like it.
And maybe
All
we
right.
maybe we could do the runners up for, we'll get to them eventually, that's for sure.
Definitely.
We'll get to them all.
One
We'll
way
do
or
them
another.
all. We'll do them all. There's no question about that. For David Rowe, Dave Gorman, I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for listening to History of Aviation Podcast.
This is Joe Morse. You are listening to the History of Aviation podcast with Derrick Beeler, David Rowe, and David Gorman.